And there we go. Well, welcome to, I guess, our next chapter in the Day of Light and Love. And I'm Jeanne Fritch, and I have the distinct honor and privilege to be the event host for these amazing contributors that have all come forward today to serve to serve you, to serve their fellow man. And they all bring gifts, that were developed on their journey. I guess that's a good way to say it, because I think our gifts do kind of get developed on the journey, and we might pick up some other good habits too. But this event was created to introduce a wave of light and a wave of love into the world, especially during the holiday season. Christmas is a time that can kind of hold the mirror up, so to speak, on maybe the quality of our relationships, or if the relationships are there, or maybe how we feel about our life. Maybe there's a gap, and so we're here to bring you to people who bring solutions, and there are solutions that were gained that they've applied themselves. Everyone who's contributing to this day has they're very transparent in teaching that they were you, their version of you, but they were you in their own travels, their own path, their own journey to get to where they are today, and now they lead other people. And so with that introduction, I want to introduce you to Vanja, and I'm going to say Popovic. Is that correct?
Yes, Vanja Popovic.
Okay, Vitch. Well,
hear my voice again.
She is amazing. She is an author. She's a mentor. She's an explorer. She's a mom. She's a teacher. She's amazing, and you have quite a story. And so if you wouldn't mind, I'd love you to kind of give us a little bit of the backstory. And then how you arrived to today.
Well, first of all, thank you for the privilege. I'm very honored to be here with you today. And it's one of those things where you realize I'm 36 years old, and I wasn't aware until last year that I've been living a very unusual life. What I mean by unusual, I think that we all kind of think that our lives are unique, and they are. Each of us has a story, but when we share those stories with each other, we realize that they're all the same stories. We all have the same sorrows, the same heartbreak, the same feelings, the same emotions. So my life is pretty much the same as everybody else's, but it's unusual in the sense that I kind of feel that I've lived 1,000 lives, to be honest with you, during the last 35, 36 years. And that's because I was born and raised in Bosnia. I'm pretty sure that if you turn your memory back in the 90s, it's one of the countries that you've heard quite a lot in the news feed, like in evening news. There was an ugly war going on there in 92, from 92 till 96. Then it hit the news again in 1999 when Serbia was bombed. I was 18 when the second bombing took place. It went on for 78 days. And what's interesting about that is that afterwards I've lived in many different countries. I left my home country as a refugee at the age of 10. And until now, so it's been like 26 years, I can say that I've lived in over 15 different countries. I taught, I studied as a student. And one thing that I can share today is that heartbreak is common. Suffering is common. As Tony Robbins likes to say, pain is okay, suffering is not. Pain is normal, suffering is not. What I've learned on this road is that there are lessons in every single thing, and very well, like from your life, there are lessons, there are pearls of wisdom that you can take along with you. But my main issue was that at the age of 30, I kind of felt tired. And I can say that I don't want to say that I was suicidal, but I was kind of, wondering like, what's out there for me? I've been around the world, I've studied, I've had scholarships to some of the wonderful universities. I had a great job. I lived what you would call a great Manhattan life, with a lot of VIP parties and a lot of being very important in that big city. But I felt so empty on the inside. And I just wondered, even if I had the family, maybe even if I had the kids, would I be a good partner? After have gone through so many heartbreaks, what do I have to offer? And that started a search, a very deep search within. And as they say, you either come out gold or you don't come out at all. So looking back on my life, I can say that, as I said, when we share our stories, and that's, I think, that's the main point of our gathering today, is that when we share our stories, we realize that we're so beautifully unique, but at the same time, our stories are all the same. So here I am, and I would love to answer any specific questions that you might have.
Well, you know what? That was a highly abbreviated story of your life. I think it's pretty interesting that your life was dramatic. I mean, when we say, I mean, I can't even fathom having been through bombings and war, because that's not in my current reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I do know from previously that you've shared, that you were one of the hosts of a children's television show at 7 years old, and did you write, is it true you wrote the
Yes.
letter to the station
Yes.
to have them consider you, and you wrote it in your own handwriting,
Mm-hmm.
unprompted, just by yourself, and then you went from that life, you were living that life briefly before the wars, so it
Mm-hmm.
was a huge shift in just culture, probably lifestyle, culture, just reality. And I was just I was just thinking about you. You went to New York City. I think you said to me that you've traveled most of the 50 states, right?
Yes.
And were you a water polo player?
Yes.
That says it all.
I
In
was
my
an
opinion,
NCAA
I'm
water
like,
polo.
oh, okay. That is like one of the most challenging sports. That's really quite amazing. But there is there is a hero's journey,
There
right?
is. Yes.
And I think what makes it the hero's journey is the resolution or the advancement through, right, through the chaos and coming out the other side with discernment and wisdom and focus and integrity and acting in character. So we're like, today you are living in the country of Montenegro,
Yes.
and but you had been a teacher in the South Bronx for like 10 years.
Yes.
That's the big deal. You said something one day, I wrote it down here. Change must come from the inside.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little
Oh,
bit?
I would love to talk about it. I can talk about this all day long. One of the things that when I work with clients, one of the things that I'm really big on is that I deeply feel that we all come with a specific toolbox, like a set of beautiful talents. They're like this beautiful rocket box that you get to explore when you were a child. And if we all look back in those times of uninterrupted play, we could play for hours. I look at my son, he's 3.5. I mean, that kid gets tired after like 6 hours of play. He puts his head down for 2 minutes and he's rejuvenated. He's just ready to roll all day long. What I mean by this is that as we go through life, our time in the day for our true talents, which really energize us, which connect us to the stream of life, which connect us to the invisible world around us, the time allotted for that type of play gets smaller, and the time allotted for, let's say, stress gets bigger and bigger and bigger as we go along, as we move through life. And at some point we just become used to it, thinking that things that we love are just something while we do these other things. And the problem is that sooner or later, no matter what kind of life a person is living, sooner or later that is meant to crash, because, as Yvonne likes to say, it's not sustainable. We
Right.
cannot escape life and keep on living. So, as we say, change has to come from within. When I was a kid, as you mentioned, I explored so many talents, and one of the things that I would enjoy playing, it was my invisible world. You know, like I could see things, I would talk to them like these little Smurfs and all these little characters that were just alive in my head. At some point, I was writing a book about them, and as you mentioned, I just got on TV and I was a host of the first big TV show for children back in ex-Yugoslavia, and what was interesting is that when the war started, everything stopped. It was like one day this is your life, and then bam, it's all gone. So you start living another life. I was lucky enough that my mother and actually my parents were able to pull my sister and me out of Sarajevo. That's my hometown that was under siege at the time. And so we didn't really get to experience the horrors, like the direct horrors that many of my peers experienced. But what we did experience along the way was discrimination. And you know, just like one day you're this talented kid with your hometown and your country, the next day you're a refugee. And then that wasn't the only time it happened. So that's something that in psychology would be called a collapse of your paradigm. Like you're living within this context and something happens and that life no longer exists as you knew it. So many people, I remember I was living in New York City when the big crisis in the United States happened, when Wall Street collapsed. Many people were going through that, you know, just suddenly you no longer have the job you had. Suddenly you no longer have the partner you had. Suddenly there's nothing attaching you to that life that you were living until a day ago. And looking back, I think those paradigm shifts are so huge for our growth, and they are part of our hero's journey. And you know, even when we look at any of these mythological, almost like mythological movies like Lord of the Rings or The Avatar, you're really looking into how one person had the life they thought they were living, and then something happened and set them on a voyage. And in my life, it happened quite a few times. So there were these things that would just take place, take place, take place. And I experienced a lot of heartbreak. The biggest heartbreak was definitely losing my country. And what I mean by that is the country is still there. My hometown is still there, but not the life that we used to live. So that big heartbreak kind of led me to seeking love constantly. You know, I was constantly dreaming about some boy who's going to love me and tell me that everything's going to be okay. But on the outside, you kind of learn how to be tough, and you kind of learn to hide your feelings, and you kind of learn how to do success. And what I mean do success is that we're constantly doing to be appreciated and to ultimately gain love. And I kind of got tired of that. My body kind of broke down. I keep saying kind of, because on the surface, that's what it looks like. But basically, as you said, it's a beautiful mythological story of the hero's journey. So the big thing that was big for me is that I spent many years just roaming around. You know, I would go take certain classes, I would read books, I would get these almost special messages that were coming from billboards and all these other things. But the true, as Yvonne likes to say, sustainable change came when I committed to a true mentor and a true program. And that totally shifted my life. First, back in 2012, when I completely left the life that I lived. In 2012, I just left my life in New York City. I was a teacher there, and I was enjoying many beautiful, as you would say, fabulous benefits of living in New York City. But that also came to be a lie at one point, because you're constantly, you know, the broken heart constantly is seeking for love to mend itself. And you don't kind of understand until you get to the breaking point that you have to do your work and you have to heal yourself. And the change has to come from the inside. And it was beautiful because while I was serving in South Bronx, I say serving because I was a New York City teaching fellow, we kept on working on these projects that were meant to heal these communities, but we weren't living in those communities. We were just teachers that were kind of part of them 8 hours a day. And I remember one of very, very wise elderly people from the Bronx, this lady came up and told me, she's like, honey, until the change comes from the inside, you're just here for a paycheck. And it was interesting because on the macro level, it was totally mirroring to me what was going on inside me. And so sometimes when people tell me like, oh, what should I do? I'm like, you know what? Sometimes you kind of completely have to abandon the life you're living in order to build a new life. And that's, as I said, something that I've experienced quite a few times in my life, and total hero journey.
So you're back in the corner of the world, kind of that basic space of where you grew up. Not exactly, but in that
Sort
vicinity. Yeah.
of.
And you have two children. You and your husband live there, and you have two children. And you wrote a book. Can
Yes.
you talk about that and how
Yes.
you use that book?
So I started writing my book when I was, as I told you, I was like 7 or 9, let's say 9. And it was, of course, a book about Lassie. Do you remember the movie Lassie Come Home?
Yes,
It was the
yes,
movie, for those of you that don't know what Lassie Come Home is about, it's about a dog that just, I think, is left astray. And then throughout the movie, he's trying to find his way back home. I started writing a book about Lassie when I was 9. And of course, I stopped. I mean, things happened. And the book kept haunting me. It kept asking me to go back to it. So while I was in New York City, I started studying writing because it was a little bit difficult for me to write in English. So I hired a mentor, a renowned Mark Matusek, a beautiful writer and a beautiful spiritual soul, just somebody who helped me on my growth line tremendously. And Mark told me, he said, Vanya, you can't force the book to come out of you. Like, you're meant to write this book. It's just a matter of when it's going to happen. But it felt to me like I just couldn't break. It was almost like this invisible membrane around me. And I would go to to writing conferences and publishers conferences, but it seemed like I couldn't break through and just do it. So in 2015, just some crazy things, let's say crazy things started going on, and just some new insights, new teachers, amazing mentors, amazing new programs came around. And a book knocked on my door, and there was a title, and the book title in English would be We're Birthing the New World. I just had this very strong sense that everything around me keeps collapsing, and it kept collapsing my whole life. And I would look at people just trying to hold on to their corporate jobs and to hold on to the life that they keep attempting to live. And I say attempting because it's constantly, trying to keep yourself afloat. And I'm like, man, this world is collapsing. We're building something new. So I went back, and almost every week I would sit down and write a chapter. So it was every single time, it was just like another story from my life that was supported by scientific research or mentors, teachings, or something that can really help the reader ignite that change from within. So the book was almost like an invitation that is speaking to the reader, an invitation to kind of wake up, to kind of let go and just move. So what was interesting about this is that once I finished the book, I was like, well, it seems like there's another book rising, but I couldn't really tell what it was. And it was kind of too fast. I'm like, hold on. We haven't even started promoting this. And here's this other thing that's happening. So I realized that it was much, much larger than the book. It was actually a program for women.
Mm-hmm.
And it was what we like to call a platform for the awakening of the sacred feminine. And we called it the awakening of the divine everyday woman. So in October, 15 of us got together, some clients, some former clients, some future, at the time they were future clients, now they're current clients. Speaking of future, every time Yvonne's name is mentioned, we're speaking about future.
Yes.
So we kind of sat down and we held something that we called the first conference for the New Balkans. We kind of envisioned what this world could be. What's the possibility of the world where women love other women, where women support other women, where even though everybody around you keeps saying, oh, you can't do this, or oh, you want to be a public speaker, oh, forget about that, you're not coached enough, you don't have enough knowledge, you don't have enough experience. I was like, what if I offered a program which enables women to get on the stage if they would like to be a public speaker? What if they had an excuse to gather other women and form these women's circles? And then I kept thinking to myself, why women's circles? I'm like, of course, sacred geometry of love. And then I was like, wow, look, our ancestors, regardless of the geographical location of our ancestry, women in the past would gather around big fires and they would exchange stories. And even if you look at the history of belly dance was not meant to allure men. It was women's dance for women. They
Oh,
would dance, belly dance around other women. So, just one thing led to another, led to another, led to another. And so now we have something that we call the Platform of Divine Women. It's a program that is meant to keep growing outside of the outside of this region, hopefully internationally, which enables women to have a program as an excuse to gather other women around, to share some quality stories, to be prompted to ask each other some quality questions. And I really do believe that, how they say happy wife, happy life,
mm-hmm.
where happy women, I really think that communities where women are happy communities,
I am absolutely.
So that's really the legacy of the change within. And now I can see how the change from within can actually spread through the communities.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. So you're encouraging people to, do you have some sort of a prototype or some kind of a program that leads women to develop these circles, these groups?
Yes. Yes. Currently, we have a program for the Balkans. That's the ex-Yugoslavia where I'm currently located. But in February, I'm going to go back to the United States, and we're going to start a platform back in the United States as well.
Beautiful.
When people ask me why, I say because it's needed. It's interesting, and we've witnessed it so many times. You and I have witnessed it, even in the online world, how when you put a powerful group of women and a powerful leader, did you just create this cohesiveness, this synthesis, this beautiful, you move the sacred feminine energy, and as I like to say, you put it back to where it belongs. So I'm really hoping to actually just ignite that fire. So we'll be going back to the United States. I'll be there for a few months, and of course I'll be offering programs that I normally teach. Those are all transformative programs for women. They're meant to kind of put us in touch with where we are, kind of detangle everything that needs to be detangled, and keep moving forward and keep getting in touch with those natural resources that we have. And there are beautiful talents.
Yeah,
So
I
when we,
think I think like at least in the United States, I know that the media kind of feeds competitiveness in
yes,
women, right?
yes,
You're always, or at least comparison, which leads to competitiveness, right? And so what I'm getting from you is that you want to return women to the basic community, the basic fellowship of the soul of the woman, right?
yes,
And to where a woman, where it's a safe place,
yes.
and there's a circle, and women are celebrated instead of talked about when they leave the room.
Yes. Well, I had this big awakening moment in 2013, and it was kind of difficult to get through it. I had a really, really good friend. I still have a very good friend. So we would go sit in a coffee shop here. It's Europe, so we all sit in coffee shops all day, and we would just people watch, and then we would look at what other women are wearing, and we'd just laugh. Oh my God, look at her, look at her. And it it was just mischievous, like it wasn't mean to harm anyone. It was just like,
Right.
oh, look, let's talk bad about everyone who's not you and I. Ha 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 ha. It was very girlish, like stupid girlish thing to do. And then one more moment I woke up and I said, you know what? It's really not fair. Because each one of us has our own choice and we make our own choices. So from now on, I'm just going to start honoring other people's choices. So we told each other we're not doing this anymore. And even now, every now and then, I will catch sometimes, we're kind of used to behave towards each other with not so gracefully, let's put it like that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, how they like to say, you can experience the toughest toughness from another woman instead of experiencing that support. And again, it goes back to that broken heart.
Yeah.
um, So I just wondered what the life would be like again. And I say again, because some of us did grow up in strong communities. You know, some of us did grow up in communities where we felt safe. You know, when somebody's grandma would bake cookies and someone
Yes.
other than your mom would doing this from the window, seeing you doing stuff
Yes.
you're not supposed to be doing, you know, where the community really raised us. Can you just imagine? I tell this to people, can you imagine some producer getting a letter from a 9-year-old, 7-year-old kid saying, "Hey, I want to be on your show." Just can you imagine that level of love, that level of giving?
Yeah.
Someone who recognizes, "Oh, look, this kid seems cool, let's put her on the show." You know, that's the type of giving that I'm talking about. The cities raising their kids, communities raising their kids. So basically, the main idea is really to ignite the essence from within and ignite that inspiration that then moves organically. And I keep, you see, I keep doing this
Yes, I know.
because basically that's what it is. And you know, I think that we're slowly making that evolution, moving from motivation, you know, and the whole world of motivation into the world of inspiration. And this keeps popping up in people's news feeds and people's lives because you just, it's time to move on, and it's time to move in a powerful way in the natural essence, the organic essence of our true nature.
What's ahead for you in 2018?
2018, I love to say how I plan things, you know. Every
Well,
time
we
you
know you're
plan.
coming to the US, so that much we know.
I have sort of big plans for 2018. We're going to be presenting a new program back in the United States. That's probably going to take place within the next few months. I'm going to be hosting different workshop women's circles again back in the United States. I'm bringing along my two little crazy kids who are going to be there to hang out with their grandparents, and then most likely we're going back to this part of the world to do some more work in Europe. What I'm really looking forward to is carrying out some more of my natural talents. And that's really something that I keep telling people about. I'm like, man, I used to be so happy when I was part of the production of the TV show. You know, we were creating new things. And so I have some gorgeous people, amazing people in my circle so far. And I'm just looking forward to expanding that to
Wow,
just new people who are creating new things.
that is amazing. Well,
Yes.
I would say to you, um, there are going to be people who will want to work with you that maybe have just going to meet you this way, and so I'm going to get some links from you, and I'll make
Okay.
sure when we post
Sounds
this,
good.
we'll be posting a replay page, and when we post that, that will be with the replay of this live stream. So um, well, thank you so much. Is there, if you're let's paint a scenario, okay? Or
Okay.
maybe two scenarios.
Okay.
One is someone who has moved through the holidays, and they're watching this, and the holidays, whatever happened, whether it was who wasn't there, maybe they were very alone, or maybe it was who was there, right?
Mhm.
Or what the circumstances were, how would they, what would you recommend to them as a step to take, or a couple of steps to take towards ending 2018 more
Mhm.
aligned with fulfillment, personal
Yes.
fulfillment?
I love this question, and I'm going to tell you why. This is for the last few weeks, I've been tuning in with my clients. We go every 3 hours, starting from 9 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning. Every 3 hours, we set our alarm clocks, and then we just connect to the field for 3 minutes and just experience the subtleness of it. And no matter where you are, or no matter who you're with, there's just this beauty of being around the holidays. And that's why sometimes they bring heartbreak, because we think we're connecting to other people, but we're connecting to something that's much bigger than simple human interaction. And if you can slow down just to be subtle enough to feel this presence of holidays, you can breathe in more of that and more of that. So what I would suggest, and this is what I normally suggest to anyone who I cross my path with, and this is something that I studied while I was working with Julia Cameron and then built on with Yvonne Delafleur. Sit down in one sitting. Just sit down with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, a candle here. I have a candle here for our gathering. And on a simple piece of paper, write down 100 things you love. Just do that. And don't get up and leave. And don't stop at 55. Sit there, listen to yourself, and just dig. You will find out there's so many subtle things and so many fine colors in your life that you enjoy. And then we just somehow stop. And then once you have the list, start fulfilling those wishes. Start doing what you really love. Because sometimes you understand that maybe a smell of lavender, just the scent of lavender, brings you alive. So maybe you want to bring more of that into your life. And that's just the beginning. But that subtleness starts building within and around us. And it's really the first step to even imagining your next year.
Wow. That's amazing. I have chill bumps on my chill bumps. No, really, I do. No, that was great. That's a very practical, anybody can do that. Anybody, but I like that you lean into the feeling of it.
It's rejuvenation. It's right. It's really, I told people the other day, I was in a webinar talking to my past and present clients about setting goals for 2018. And I said, guys, just relax. Let's not set those goals today. Maybe let's just tune in. And we had a workshop just on really tuning in on the level of being, what brings more of us to us. And from there on, some other things emerge, and maybe some other goals as well.
Wonderful. You are so lovely, and this time with you has just been really lovely.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you taking the time. This is, I know, a very busy time, and you have little ones. I'm sure they're very excited in the other room. So we'll sign off for now. We will put those links, Vanja, so that people can find you and can talk with you more about working with you. And we look forward in the States here. I'm in the States. I look forward to hearing about what you're going to do in 2018 with your mission of building those women's circles. I'm not sure what you call it, but that was the idea, right?
It is the idea. We don't have the name yet. It's a brand new thing.
It's building community, though.
It's building communities.
It's building, yes. And we build community, and you build it with, that speed of trust inside the community, and then multiply that. And how does that impact the world? And you mentioned about women's energy. It's time for women to lead. I shouldn't say that. I should say it's time for women to fully lead.
Yes.
And not be afraid of leading. And leading doesn't mean that you have to lead a whole organization. You can lead your home.
Yes.
Right? Women, what a beautiful assignment to lead your home. That it starts with leading ourselves.
Yes.
And kind of making that decision like you talked about at the coffee shop with your friend, that you made the decision that instead of looking through critical lens, you were going to look through a lens of appreciation.
Yes. And it's a much more expansive way to be. It's a very expansive way to be.
Very freeing, isn't it?
It's very freeing, and it's almost like there was this one time in New York City. I'm just going to say this, and it's a true example of how that level of group leadership takes place in communities. I was in a busy yoga class, and for some reason people kept coming in, and somebody said, "Oh, there's no more spots." So suddenly we all kept moving little by little, and there was room for everyone. But it was the presence of inclusiveness in the room.
More chill bumps.
That made it possible for everyone to be in that yoga studio. Well, you see, as women, we have to bring forward more of that. And if we really lean into our feminine power, and I say power, it's a soft power, but it's the really power that kind of holds the essence of hugging ourselves first and then kind of hugging the whole world.
Wow.
Imagine what the world would be like if we all kind of just were able to tune into that.
That's where we're headed.
Yes. Thank you so much for this privilege.
I
It
love
was
you.
beautiful.
Thank you.
Love
Thank
you too.
you. Appreciate you. And people are going to enjoy this replay. Thank you,
Ah,
Vanja.
thank
Much
you.
love.
Much love to you and to everybody else.
Are you there?
Yes.